Good morning, everybody. Today's session is all about the client portal logins that you can have into MARKUS. And so what I'm going to be covering is the benefits of having a client portal login, how to set one up, what the client user can see and do on their portal login, and finally how you can utilize job messages to communicate with your client. Why have a client portal? There's several benefits, and usually the most common reasons are listed in front of you. The main benefit is to cut down on the volume of calls and emails chasing job updates with you. So you might end up contacting your clients regularly as well. You might have to be constantly in touch with them daily, weekly, providing updates on where their jobs are up to. This allows them to log in and see that for themselves without you having to do it. And as well as the ability to have real-time access to photos and surveys and so on. So as you know, photographs taken on jobs, provided you've got Signal on the mobile app, the photos come back to jobs immediately anyway. So the client will be able to see those as they're coming in if they so wished. And of course, once a job's complete, all the information that the engineer would be capturing on site, surveys, signatures, things like that, they can all be viewed by the client, so you don't have to start sending them information. So it does cut out a lot of administration work at your side. I mentioned on the first slide we're going to cover job messages, where you can use job messages to communicate between yourselves and recording those conversations against the job. So rather than sort of having those conversations by text message, WhatsApp, email, phone calls, and then having to type the notes on the job, they're all automatically stored there as well, and you can respond to them. But I'll cover that in a little while. And I've put a little bullet point there. You can also add the client logo. So some of you have got branding already on your system where you've got your own logos and your own color schemes. Well, if you upload the client's logo, when they log in, they feel like they're logging into their own system. And we have got some clients of ours that allow client users to create their own jobs in the system. Not many, but it is possible, and I'll show you how that works as well. How do we set up a client user? Well, I'm going to demo both of the options there. You can literally create a new login from scratch. Often people ask us to help with the very first time you do it. That's just because sometimes you're not overly sure, you don't create users very often, and we might need to do something with permissions. So if you're unsure and you want a hand, give us a shout. We'll be more than happy to help you set something up. We've also got the ability to clone users. So some of you will be already doing that if you're sort of the main admin user within your organization. To create a new back office login, the easiest way is to clone an account that exists already with similar permissions that you need. So if you already had a client user and you wanted to create a new one quite quickly, it's literally about a 2-second task to create a new client login for another client using our copy feature. So I'll cover both those, and there is a handy YouTube video, as by the little sort of screenshot there, all about how to create new users yourself. That's not just to do with client users, that's any users using the clone or copy user option. So that's a really handy little video to watch if you ever need to do that for any of your users at all. I'm going to demo both options. So if I quickly bounce into my little demo system here, you should be able to see my little demo system that I've just gone into. So the first way of doing it, usually if you've got access to system users, this is where you'll find the ability to create your client login because it's in the same place. If you haven't got access to this, you need to find someone within your organization that does. And if you feel you should have it, you need to request that from them and they can grant you the permissions on that as well. So clicking into system users, this screen here, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but if you wanted to create a user from scratch, simply hitting new entry allows you to complete all the fields that you can see in front of you. I'm not going to go into everything because client logons are a lot simpler than standard users. In order to do a client login, you would pop the username in there, the full name of the client in there, the email address that it needs to go to, but the thing that you really need to be careful of is this one. It's the customer field. So you would check in here and you would give them the client login for the customer that they are. So you wouldn't normally do that for your standard back office users, but on a client login, that's really key. The only other things you need to do is you need to give them user access because otherwise they can't access the system. And you need to give them client only access, which is that permission there. Now you can see there the description of client only. It limits the dashboard panels, the job sheet buttons and job sheet sections. I'll show you what I mean by that. when we actually log in as a client. But you can see there, you've got literally the username, the full name, an email address, the client, and then the 2 permissions that are essential to get you going. There are, if I scroll down here, some additional permissions that you might want to just bring in a little bit as well. So something like suppress personalize is really useful. That stops the user from being able to personalize their dashboard or personalize their job sheet layout. So you might have given them access to certain things because you didn't want them to maybe see a certain table on the job sheet. Having this here stops them being able to personalize their job sheet and bring in, say, job history or something like that. Equally, suppressing labor and so on, those all hide those different sections. Now, actually, on a client login, they would never see the labor section in terms of the values, but you might not want to show them who's been to site, say, for example, an engineer name. So you might want to tick all the suppress options like so. Once you're done, hit continue. That saves your login. Job done. I mentioned about cloning a user. That's definitely the easiest way to do it. So I know that I've got a client demo user here. So if I search for that user, they appear in my search results like that. And over here on the right hand side, because I've got user admin permissions, I can copy that user. So you would hit copy. And as you can see already, what's happened, it's already put in the permissions that we needed. It's copying the menus, the dashboard and the job sheet layout from that user. So everything that was set up in terms of menus, the dashboard widgets, the different items on the job sheet will all be cloned from that user. And it's also remembered the client. So I would want to change that. So I'm going to want to make my new account for the client of New Slafford Housing. And so I'm going to just pop a username in there, a full name of the client user, and then I would obviously pop an email address in there as well. Now, saving that logon and clicking send new password will email a link with the username and password to the email address that you put in here. So I'm going to just press continue now to save that. And then I'm going to go and find my New Slafford Housing user account. And there it is. So I'm just going to log in using this button here rather than sending the email to myself and having to wait for that to come through because it's a demo and you don't need to wait for that. So if I hit on there, that would log me in as that user. Now, I mentioned before about permissions. I've left the personalize option available to me for this one now so that we can have a look at it. Ordinarily, you would tick that to stop your users from being able to personalize their dashboard and their job sheets. What I would recommend as a admin user that's doing this task of creating client logins is that you should always do what I'm about to do and log in as that user. You should always log in and make sure that what they see is what you are happy with them seeing, and go into it without that ticked so you can then personalize everything you need to personalize and it will all just look the way you need it to look. If there are any specific menu items you want to give to your client, you'll probably need to ask us about that, unless of course you're cloning a user that's already got them. But you can get in touch with us and we'll support you through that side of it. Absolutely no problem. Before I log in, I'm just going to bounce back to my little presentation here. What can a client user see? Well, you saw the permissions that I ticked, and I'm going to log in as one in a moment so we can have an example. But basically, the short answer is whatever you allow them to see. The client-only permission does restrict them to very, very limited amounts of information. But even those limited pieces of information can be limited further by you taking them away from their login. So that's why I always recommend that you log in as the user and personalize it before you then block the personalizing option, if that makes sense. So we limit dashboard items to what we believe to be useful for the client, and those are these ones here. And on a job sheet, sections can be hidden as well or completely removed from view. Now, as you're probably aware, On the notes and attachments side of things, there's the toggles for visible to operative, visible to customer. Visible to customer means that the customer will see it when they log into their system. So anything that's toggled that way, a client login will be able to see that. There are system options that sit behind the scenes that we have access to that control whether or not newly added notes and attachments are automatically visible to clients or not. So if you're unsure, you'll know what happens when you drag and drop an attachment to a job sheet or you attach new ones. It will automatically do the thing that it's set to do. If you don't want them to automatically be visible, which in a client login world I suggest you probably wouldn't, you would need us to change that system option so that they're not visible all the time and they're only visible if the user ticks to say that they want them to see them. And we have a similar thing with operative photographs, that any photographs taken by the mobile app can be made visible automatically to other operatives, but also to the client user as well. So again, that would be up to you whether you wanted that option on all the time or whether it was that you actually wanted the control that you tick the ones that your client should see. I mentioned briefly that clients can log jobs. This is possible. Not all clients do it. We have a very cut down version of the job entry screen that you're all used to seeing. So the one on the right there, manual job entry, that looks hopefully very familiar to most of you. That's the job entry screen that you are all familiar with using. This here is a cut down version of that client users can use to log a job. And as you can see, there are a lot less fields. And so what happens there is the job gets logged and goes to a status. We can tell it where to go, but generally they go to a status of received via import, which is essentially mirroring what would happen if you had an interface to a client system or if you were to use the job importer. So the idea being that you review the jobs at that status and you then pull them into the system and edit the fields that need editing and add in the extra bits of information that the client wouldn't know when they were creating the job. So if this is something that's not normally added as part of a client user, if you were going to create your own, if you did want this menu item adding for any users, this is the sort of thing that you'd need to ask us about. Second part of the demo, we almost got to it because I almost clicked the button before. This is what can a client user see? So the easiest way to demonstrate this is to log in as a client user. So here I am back in our user setup for our client login. I've got this button here which says log in as that client. So if I hit that button, I'm now logged in as our client user. So as you can see at the top there, I've got our client's logo. Just a note on that, if you do use lettering or the communications within our system, having the client logo set against the client, that's the sort of thing you can pull in on your letters as well when you're sending them appointment letters or anything like that. You can get their logo shown on there. First of all, as you can see, there are no menu items apart from log out. If we did have the ability to log jobs, you'd probably have a create job option over here. The home button forms exactly the same as any normal login, and we've got the drop down up there as well, which again, they've got limited access, but they can do the same sorts of things you can do in terms of changing their password and so on. You'll notice down at the bottom corner, I've left personalize on. That's just so I can show you what the different options are. Ordinarily, if you'd ticked the user permission in the back office on your login to say they can't do that, then they wouldn't get that there. I've just given us a very basic dashboard, and so you can see we've got a list of all jobs here, which are all the statuses, and like you'd expect, you can click into each of these and they will show you the lists of jobs. So let's say I wanted to go and look at the ones that are on parts ordered. There you go, I can see I've got a list of 7 jobs. You might remember when you click on your items requiring action that your report is quite large. It will probably go way off the right of the screen and you've got to scroll along to see all the fields. So you can see there we've got a selection of fields available to the client, usually just the important ones that they would need to know to keep on top of their data. In the Find Job dashboard widget, this isn't just limited to client users, by the way. You could have this. It's an option in the personalized dashboard. You can use this to use the sort of basic Find Job fields. Of course, you probably use the menu item of Find Job and you've got a whole host of fields to go at. But if you only ever search on addresses, this is actually a really quick and easy way of doing that. Take, for example, if I went in here and did postcode and then hit find, you can see that there are 9 jobs for that postcode that I've just managed to find using the dashboard. Similarly, there is the customer reference numbers, or ticket numbers, but they're, or secondary reference rather. If I pop a number in there and then hit search, that takes me straight into that job, and you can see that we've got very limited information on this. It's a job that's at status issued. It's not had any visits. It's had nothing on it. So at the moment, all they can see on this is the job description and the bare bones information of the job. So nothing overly exciting on there at that point. If I go into our list of, let's say, awaiting allocation, and I'm just going to pick on any old job. You can see here we've got the same table at the top for general details, but on this one there was an ordered SOR code. So as you can see, because it's a client user, no financials at all. We've got the SOR code and the description of the work involved on the SOR code, and we've got the ordered quantity. We'll show when it's been delivered and we'll show if it's been invoiced, but what we don't show you, or as the client this is, we don't show them how much it's worth. And also, as you'll notice on there, there's no evidence on there at all of any labour or costs or material costs at all. They're all hidden. You can see we've got sections here for messages. Communications would be things like any SMSs that you've sent out of the system, any letters, any emails. And job inspections would be things such as your surveys and so on. So what I'll do is I will go into a job that's been completed to show you one that looks a little bit like it's got a bit more information in it. So on our dashboard, you'll probably have spotted over here, there was this dashboard widget for jobs completed today. This is quite a handy little widget for client users to go in and see live or close to live jobs that day. So jobs completed in the last 10 minutes, last hour, last 4 hours, and so on. So if I click into the 3 here and I go for, let's say this one here for Derek Jones, we can see this one is looking a little bit more busy. There's some more information to see on this one. We haven't got any messages and there have been no letters, but what we have had is a visit where a risk assessment was carried out and a standard end of visit survey, both of which can be printed by the client user. We've got this little table here for job visits. That would obviously show you multiple rows if you'd had several visits on that site. A lot of our contractors tend to hide this one from our client users just because sometimes they don't necessarily want the exact to the minute times that people arrived and left site. That would be entirely up to you, and I suppose depends on the contract that you've got with your client. So we can see on this one here that SOR code of renewing a thermostat isn't outstanding anymore because it was delivered on the job. And we've got a picture here of a boiler with its cover off as well, which presumably was done by the engineer. PDA notes there, we can click on that and any notes that you want to see. We've got linked jobs. If you use linked jobs to sort of link any jobs together for recalls or anything like that, they'll be able to see that. And there are also things to do with the contact information on the site. And if you are utilising the additional job details, you can choose whether or not you want to show those to your client as well. Now, I mentioned about personalising. Down there you can see they can personalise the job sheet at the moment. You would normally suppress that, as I've said. You can personalise the different job sheet sections. So one of the reasons you would personalise this is that you probably wouldn't want the client seeing the history on the job, which at the moment, if I was a client user, I could just drag that in and now I can start looking at the different history items on the job and seeing who's done what. So you probably would want to hide that. So you wouldn't show that one and you'd certainly suppress personalise. That's your job sheet. That's sort of what the client would see. I mentioned about job messages. So we do have lots of contractors using job messages already, sometimes to communicate internal notes regarding jobs. Lots of people have a message type of for the attention of, and then the names of the users that need to respond to messages. Often it's QSs or managers or anything, something like that. And the interfaces to client systems also plonk messages into the job messages side of things as well. So you get to see interface messages in there as well from, particularly if you have failures on the interface or any error messages, they come through as well. But we have got some clients using this to communicate with the client. And it's a really useful tool because you get the history of the message, who raised it, who responded, and all of this is stored on the job for everyone to see, everything in one place. So you can see there we've got our little dashboard widget for messages, and on here we've got a summary of a message. What I'd like to do now is demonstrate that one just briefly for you. So if I step back into here, and I'm going to go into a specific job just because I like to be prepared. That one there, parts ordered. So I want to chase where my parts are on this. This is a job, I'm a client user. I'm wanting to know why this hasn't been fixed yet. The radiator was loose or fallen off. Presumably they're trying to buy a new radiator for it. Where's my job up to? So as a client user, I can click the add message and I can say whatever message I'd like. And you can set up different message types. So I mentioned about people have the for the attention of. Those would be quite useful for internal things. You might just have a simple message. You could have inquiry. You could have whatever you want in there. Those are things that we would need to add for you. So if you want message types modifying or adding, let us know. So I'm just going to call that a message. And the name is the username that's logged in. So you could add your own name on there if you've got multiple people that access. So I'm just going to press continue. And now on my job sheet, you can see there's a message section just appeared with the message that I've just added and when I did it. If I press my home button, we can see on our dashboard there's a message and there's two of them. I can click in there and we've got a message there where we asked about a quote, but we've also got where are we up to with this. If I log out and now pretend that I am logging in as our back office user in our normal system, up here I've got this is me as the contractor now, I've got my dashboard widget with my messages on it, and we can see here that there's a message from New Slafford Housing, Chris, that's open. It's not been responded to yet, so I can click in there. And I can see that this is a message saying where are we up to with this, and it's in relation to this job that's at status parts required. So I can click into the job, I can have a look, I'd review the notes, I'd look at the attachments, I'd maybe make a few phone calls, and from here I can respond, but you'll have also noticed that if I click view, I can respond from there too. So and I can press continue. And that has now put a response in the message. It hasn't closed the message because that would be down to really the client user to do that, or if there's further conversations to be had. So I could have closed it, but I've left it open for now. If I now quickly go back to our client user, I'm just going to log in this way for ease. So I'm going to log in as our client user again. There we go. So in our messages, there's still 2 live messages. However, we can see for the where are we up to with this, I've had a response. I was very speedy with my response 2 minutes after it was created. It will be here next week. So I could go, oh, well, that's excellent. I'm happy with that. Message is closed. If I go to my dashboard, there's 1 message left, so I don't have to action that anymore. A really handy way of communicating with your clients. So even if you don't, having listened to everything I've said today so far, go, actually, do you know what? Client users don't want one. Even if what you've learned from this is that you can do messaging and you can do the thing I've just shown you in the last couple of minutes, that could be a really useful takeaway from today's session as well, in that it is a really powerful tool that we have got a lot of our customers using. And if you're not using this and would like to, there are YouTube videos on it, as well as obviously the little demo I've just done today. But you can also get in touch and we can talk to you about how best to make use of that, and if you want to change the message types and so on. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Just a final point on it. I didn't do a slide on it, but it should be worth mentioning that they are priced as sort of a monthly licensing, and they are priced at half of the monthly cost of the standard back office users. So if you do want to get one set up, or if you'd like any help with us on that, please let us know. Something that's worth mentioning in terms of permissions and sort of license limits, you would be able, and it's quite easy to do this, we would set this up for you, to set up limits per client. So say, for example, if you just had 2 client licenses but had 5 clients all logging in, you wouldn't want all 5 clients necessarily sharing those logins, because you might find that 2 people log in on one client and then the rest can't log in at all. So what we would do is we would create unique permissions per client as well, so that you have got dedicated permissions for each client user, so that no one client monopolizes the licenses, if that makes sense. As I say, please get in touch if you'd like to learn more. We are holding our next session in January, towards the end of January, on the 29th, and quite an exciting one. This is all about how we are introducing AI within MARKUS to assist with your supplier invoice process. So if you're interested in learning about AI and the sort of auto invoice process for purchase invoices, do join us on the 29th of January. And unless we have any questions, I suppose all really that is left for me to say is, on behalf of Epic Systems, have a very Merry Christmas and all the very best for the new year.